Alice Boudreau, and welcome to We Don't Talk Anymore, a podcast about friendship breakups. Have you had a friendship that ended explosively, that made you question if you even knew who that person was at all? No closure, no warning, just a sudden explosion and then silence? What about a friendship breakup during one of the biggest days of your life? A birthday, a wedding, someone who showed their true colors around something that was really important to you. Today, I want to tell you about my friend Daisy. As always, I'm sharing this story from my own perspective, how I experienced it, how I remember it, and what it meant to me. I've changed names and identifying details to protect privacy, and my intention isn't to shame or criticize anyone, but to process and reflect on something that shaped me. Daisy and I were friends for about 8-ish years. We met in 2015 when I took a semester off from college to do the Disney College program. I talked about this in my last episode a little bit, but I almost flunked out of my freshman year of college, and I really, really needed a break. So I took the first semester of my sophomore year off and moved to Florida for like 6 months and did the Disney College program. My mom came with me a few days before orientation so we could have a few days to actually go to the parks, and she wanted to help me get settled in. It was the farthest I'd ever been from home. I was 19 and I knew absolutely no one going into the program. So for good reason, she was pretty worried about me. The trip with her was bittersweet. Disney's always been a pretty special place for our family because we didn't really go on vacation a lot growing up, but when we did, it was Disney. And I just have a lot of fond memories of me and my sister and me and my whole family there. On my first day moving into one of the Disney College apartments, my mom left and immediately there was a party at my apartment complex. It was so funny because one of the major rules of the DCP is that no alcohol is allowed in any apartment with anyone younger than 21. And literally on the first day, all of these underage kids are getting drunk. We found out about the party because we found sticky notes all over everyone's doors in our building, and I'm assuming everyone who had been there knew it was move-in day. I met my roommates and we all decided to go to the party, and that's where I met Daisy. We just instantly clicked. She was one of those people that when you meet, it feels like you've known each other forever, like we already spoke each other's language, if that makes sense. Daisy quickly became one of my best friends during that time, and truthfully was one of my anchors in what was a really, really chaotic time of my life. I had been in an extremely toxic relationship from like 2013-ish to 2015, and that breakup genuinely broke me. Part of the reason I went to the DCP was because I just needed to get away. I needed to go somewhere where no one knew me, and I felt like I could just be myself without any preconceived notions from anyone, get a clean slate, meet new people, and escape my reality, really. I had done part-time jobs when I was in school, but this was my first time doing a full-time job, and Disney works the fuck out of their college students. And I needed the money, to be fair. They automatically took rent and utilities out of your paychecks, and you would get paid week to week. So I wanted to be working as much as possible. I was a character attendant, so that meant I worked with characters all the time. And Daisy was working food service, and we were working, well over 40 hours a week. This was during holiday season too, and a lot of the times I would be working doubles. My longest shift was, I think, like a 16 or 17 hour shift where I got to Magic Kingdom at 7:30 in the morning for a morning with Rafiki, who's like the monkey in Lion King, if you don't know. And after that shift, I had, I think, technically an hour lunch. And then I had another hour where I just napped in the break room. And then I worked the Halloween party until like 1 a.m. It was so intense. But I love Disney, and I met some really cool people while being there, and I needed and wanted to stay busy. So when me and Daisy would hang out, we would either go to the parks or parties or just hang out. I didn't have a car. My parents didn't want me driving down to Florida. So I mostly relied on either the bus transportation to and from the parks, walking, or Daisy, because she was one of the few people I knew at DCP who had a car. And we would, like, I remember once we went to Hollywood Horror Nights. That was awesome. It was my first time ever going. And because I worked for Disney, I got like the Florida resident discount. So it was only like $65. We would go to Senior Frogs. We would go to the parks together. We would just hang out at each other's apartments and do nothing. And I just really felt like I had met like one of my platonic soulmates with her. We were such broke college kids. Like, I remember so vividly going to Daisy's apartment and having chicken nuggets and rice with yum yum sauce as a meal. That was like a staple meal we would have if we were hanging out and wanted to make food together. We went to see a pretty interesting production of Reefer Madness together on a day we both had off once too. I just loved her. Like, we both had backgrounds in theater, so that's something that we really bonded over. And she was truly one of the best friends I ever had, and the longest friendship that came out of that time of my life, and actually one of the only friendships from the Disney College program that actually survived. That's another story for another time, though. Daisy actually ended up leaving DCP a few days before her contract ended. I think she was just done with it and wanted to be home, and I can't really clearly remember why she did, but she lived in Panama City at the time and went back, and I was so distraught because a lot of my friends and even some of my roommates left early, and the end of my DCP was not good for me. By the time I was done, I just wanted to go home. So many of my friends had left early, and I'd gone through something pretty traumatic during my last month there, so I was ready to be back home. And Daisy was the only person that really kept in contact with me consistently. We were friends for, I think, around 8 years. We would call and talk to each other constantly. We would always check in on each other. And I remember always feeling appreciated, or at least thought of, because even when a while would pass without us talking on the phone, she would always text me, and I would text her too, just checking in. Just small things like, hey, I love you. I'm thinking of you. I hope you're doing well. And then eventually we would set aside time to FaceTime or call and catch up. And when we did, we'd be on the phone for hours, like 3 to 4 hours, catching up on weeks or months worth of tea. And our friendship was like that for years. Easy. Of course, there were periods where we didn't talk as much. I remember when I moved to LA was one of those times. But when I moved to LA, I kind of isolated myself from a lot of people that I had been friends with before I moved for various reasons. But even if months had gone by without me and Daisy talking, we would always pick up where we left off, like no time had passed at all. During COVID was one of those times where we just picked up and continued where we left off. We would FaceTime and play Animal Crossing together or watch movies together. And our friendship was one that really gave me life, I thought. One that I felt like I could always rely on, whether it was just to have a tea sesh or just to hang out casually while we did something else. Throughout the years of our friendship, we really only got to see each other in person one other time after the DCP. We talked a lot about one of us visiting the other, but as broke college kids, it wasn't super feasible. Daisy even planned to visit a few times, but then it just wouldn't come to fruition. And I didn't think much about it at the time, to be honest. My husband and I went on vacation to Disney, I think back in 2018, and we stopped in Panama City to see Daisy for a couple days when she still lived there. And it was nice. We had a good time. We mainly thrived off of like texting each other or sending voice memos, or we would call when one of us had like a long drive, or like she was one of those people that could call me randomly and I wouldn't mind, which is pretty rare. But our friendship didn't really start to change until around like 2022, 2023, I would say. We were there for each other through a lot. Daisy was there for me during my move from LA back to Tennessee, during all the stress of figuring out my career and how that was going to change, figuring out how to make friends in a city that I knew but didn't really know many people anymore. And we had been there for each other through so much in college too. I was there for her when she went back to the DCP second time and then decided it wasn't for her and then left, through career changes, through breakups, through deciding to go to grad school. We were just there for each other through a lot. We had been friends through many different phases of both of our lives. I was there for her when she was going through a lot of gender dysphoria and identity changes, and when she started questioning if she wanted to take hormones or not, and when she did, I was there for her, and I just let her vent to me and go through that together. And I just want to add that this isn't to be like, wow, look how great of a friend I am, because that's not what this is at all. I feel like this is to show how deep this friendship was. Like, this wasn't a surface level friendship. We talked about everything from day-to-day woes to like very deep existential conversations. And I thought that she was one of those people that I could trust with anything, really. I think the first time I really felt like things were shifting was when she met her boyfriend. It's been a couple years since this happened, so I don't know if they're still together, but for the purpose of telling this story, I'm just going to say it in the present tense. She met her new boyfriend and was constantly having issues with him, feeling like he didn't make her a priority, like his best friend was more important than her. And from my perspective, he didn't really treat her right. But I would do what you're supposed to do as a best friend and give honest advice, be there for her even when she didn't take that advice, and, let her make her own decisions, but be honest. Like, I'm the kind of person, I'm very blunt and honest. And when someone asks for my opinion, especially if I know you very well, then I'm going to give it to you straight. And it started to feel like as time went on that we would have these conversations. She would call me or I would call her, and it would turn into her talking to me about her problems or venting, which of course is fine. But then when it was my turn to talk about what I was dealing with, all of a sudden she had to go, and it became a pattern. And it really hurt my feelings. But I just let it slide because I assumed, oh, well, maybe she's busy. She's got a lot going on. This was right around the time that I started going through ketamine treatments because my depression after moving back to Tennessee was really bad. And at the same time, I'd been misdiagnosed with bipolar, then rightfully diagnosed with ADHD. And I was trying all sorts of new medications to find the right one for me. And if you've ever needed to be on medication, you know how much of a pain in the ass that is. But my ADHD diagnosis really made a lot of my mental health issues truly make more sense to me. All of that is to say, I think I was so depressed and going through so much at the time that I was trying not to think too deeply into what was going on with Daisy, and I just wanted to keep the peace and not complicate another relationship in my life. Since she lived all the way in Florida, it was easy to do that, to just pretend or feel like everything was still okay, even when it was kind of slowly disintegrating, really. It was easy to explain away those kinds of behaviors, especially early on. In 2022, my partner proposed to me, and I always knew that picking bridesmaids would be hard for me because of my sister. I never really thought about that until we got engaged. And then it just was kind of this crisis for me on top of everything else. Like, no one felt like the right choice as Maid of Honor to me because my sister was supposed to be there. She was supposed to do that. And I contemplated for a really long time on what to do. Like, do I just not have one? Do I only have bridesmaids? But that didn't feel right either because wedding planning was so stressful, and I knew it was going to be stressful because I get overwhelmed relatively easily, especially at this time of my life. And I really needed someone to help me with some of it. I didn't expect anyone to pay for the bachelorette trip or plan it entirely or plan or pay for the wedding shower either. But I did want someone to at least help me with the planning and take some of the mental burden off of me. And at the time, the closest friend that I had, who I had known the longest, was Daisy. So after a lot of deliberating and not really feeling like any choice was the right choice, but feeling this like pressure that I put on myself, I know that I put this pressure on myself to choose someone, I chose Daisy. And in hindsight, I know that I should have chosen someone else, but I think I put myself under so much pressure, and I didn't want to hurt any of my friends' feelings. I didn't want any of my friends to feel less than. So I just kind of copped it out and was like, well, I've known her the longest, so I'm going to choose her. I was figuring out so much at the time about myself and my mental health. And I felt like at the time Daisy could step up in the expectations that I had for a maid of honor, even though, again, like no choice felt right within me. Like no choice felt right because my sister should have been there, And that's hard even to this day. I know you can't really like should, coulda, woulda, especially with grief and loss, but that's always something that's hard, no matter how long it's been. So I sent off my bridesmaids boxes. Daisy opened it on FaceTime with me and she said yes. And I told her, you know, these are my expectations. You don't have to pay or plan for everything, but just helping me with my planning process when we can talk would be so helpful. And she agreed. And I honestly wish that she had just been honest and told me she would rather be a regular bridesmaid. Like, I think it might have actually been a relief for me, because part of me felt like I was betraying my sister by having anyone else. And I know that's a lot to unpack there. We've worked through it. I'm in therapy. Don't worry about me. We're fine. But Daisy said yes. And this is where everything kind of really starts to fall apart. She never wanted to talk about wedding stuff. Anytime I would bring it up, she magically had to get off the phone or wouldn't respond to my texts for days or didn't have the time. And it really hurt my feelings. Wedding planning was not enjoyable for me. It was extremely stressful, mainly because we were paying for the wedding ourselves without any help. And our wedding planner was a shit show. She was so bad that I genuinely wish I would have just planned it myself. But again, that's another story for another time on another platform. And all throughout this, I was getting my meds figured out, finally getting sober, trying to juggle everything at once, trying to like come into my own and like be at peace with my diagnosis and learn more about it and learn how to function healthily for the first time in my life. And it was just kind of a mess. I had no idea how to talk to her about it, because every time I tried to, she would hang up or say she was busy or that she had to go. And I just didn't understand, especially when we would usually spend the first half of the call talking about her and her shitty boyfriend. I was there for her through all the shit with her boyfriend, and I just felt so defeated. So time passes. We did briefly talk about the bachelorette trip on a phone call once when I was debating where I wanted it to be, because we wanted to do a joint bachelor and bachelorette trip so all of our bridesmaids and groomsmen could meet each other before the wedding and get to know each other, so it wasn't as awkward at the wedding. And I remember us talking briefly about like brainstorming that, but it was really hard to get her to commit to talking about it longer than that. So I'm pretending like everything's fine, or trying to at least, and I get her on the phone long enough to tell her when the wedding shower is and ask where she'd want to stay, like if she wanted to get an Airbnb or if she wanted to stay with me, and we're working out all those details. The wedding shower was Labor Day weekend 2023, and we were going dress shopping that weekend as well, the 2 days before. So about a week and a half before all of this, she lets me know she booked an Airbnb for her and her boyfriend. And she was like, I'm so excited to see you. I'm so excited for you to meet him. We should go get lunch. We should do this and this, just the four of us. And meanwhile, I have 2 other bridesmaids staying at our house with us. My parents are coming into town. We have like 5 groomsmen coming into town. Like, that was just not feasible. And she was treating it like it was a vacation just for us 4 instead of what it actually was, which was a weekend to spend with everyone and to celebrate me and my fiance for our wedding shower. I ended up telling her, like, yes, if you can get here before everyone else, we'd love to have lunch or dinner and spend a day with just you 2. But if not, we're going to have other people staying with us and coming into town. So we'll just have to wait for another time for that. She was like very much not happy about it. And she ended up being like, okay, well, we'll see. And it was like, girl, no, we won't see. Like, I wish it could happen, but it's just not going to. But I let it go because I was like, okay, she's just excited for me to meet her boyfriend. And honestly, after how much I heard about him, I wanted to meet him too. But mostly, I obviously wanted to see her because it had been like 5 years since I had seen her in person. So the week goes by. I'm stressed out. I, again, was planning the wedding shower mostly on my own. And I had asked her months before to pick out some party games for us all to play, and she hadn't done anything. And I was getting really frustrated, especially because I told one of my other bridesmaids about it, and she immediately just Googled wedding shower games and sent me like a bunch of TikToks, a bunch of different like results on Etsy, but Daisy didn't. And it was such a simple thing that I needed off of my plate when I had so much else to do, and she had so long to do it, but she didn't. And someone else did it in less than 5 minutes. And I understand that I could have done it in 5 minutes too, but that's not the point. I asked her to do that because I needed help, because I was carrying the mental burden of literally everything else. I was so upset and I was getting really fed up, and I did end up trying to talk to her about it. And she just told me that she wanted to help out and maybe I could send her a Google Doc or something so I knew what needed to get done and she could delegate tasks to other bridesmaids. Like, she specifically was like, you tell me what needs to be done and I'll tell everyone else what needs to be done. It just felt like, I don't know, she kept saying she wanted to help, but then she wasn't helping. And then when I tried to talk to her about it, she made it seem like it was my fault for not asking for help when I did ask for help. Like, I remember her being like, I just need you to tell me what you need me to do. But I did tell her what I needed her to do, and she didn't do it. It was so frustrating. And I just couldn't understand. I just could not understand what the problem was. So me and my fiance went to visit my parents, I think the week before the wedding shower, just to hammer out some details before coming back home. And my brother and sister-in-law couldn't come to the wedding shower, but they wanted to help. So they told us to make a wish list for decor and games and suggested that I send that out to my bridesmaids and to Daisy. So I did. I said, hey, I know you've been busy and I totally understand that, but I thought since you couldn't get to the wedding shower games, maybe you could just buy 1 or 2 things off this list for us for the shower. And I want to be crystal clear. The entire decor list was $80 max. All of the separate decorations ranged from $5 to $20. It was nothing fancy. It was balloons, paper streamers and shit. Nothing crazy. She said, yeah, I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but I feel weird about you pressuring me into spending money. And I feel like you're condescending to me. I'm really kind of hurt and I'm at work, so I can't talk right now, but we can talk later. Side note, I totally forgot. Part of the reason we were out of town to see my parents is because my mom was getting eye surgery. And so we were going to go help her recover and all of that. So I'm dealing with that and wedding shower stuff and a maid of honor who's not maid of honoring. So I responded I literally remember this message while waiting for my mom to get out of surgery is when she sent me that message. And I literally was like, what the fuck is happening? I said, that wasn't my intention at all. I tried to word my text really intentionally to be cognizant of her feelings and that I'd really like to talk on the phone when we can because I don't want anything else to get misconstrued by going back and forth over text. That happens all the time. I always prefer, I don't think every serious conversation needs to happen over the phone, but when you're butting up against each other and assuming tone checking people over text, then that's when I'm like, okay, we need a phone call to clear up everything. So I sent that text and I didn't hear from her for, I think 3 days or something. Days had passed. I don't remember how many. Enough so that my mom comes out of surgery, she recovers fine, me and my fiance drive back home, and there's 3 days left until my wedding shower. And she hasn't texted me, so I'm not sure if she's even coming anymore because I haven't talked to her since that text. So we set up a time to call and she's acting like everything's normal. I'm not exaggerating when I say this phone call lasted maybe 5 minutes total. How does a friendship break up in 5 minutes or less? This is how. It's not funny. It's not funny. It was actually devastating in the moment, but I think it's funny to look back on now because it was so ridiculous. He literally was like, hey girl, what's up? And I was so put off. I was like, well, I'm not great. I just know we need to talk some stuff out. And maybe you can go first since you were upset. And she was like, yeah, it just made me feel super uncomfortable that you were asking me for money. It made me feel like you were pressuring me and that just wasn't cool at all. But that's it, really. I was so taken aback because I was not pressuring her at all. I was asking for maybe $10 towards stupid disco ball decor. And honestly, I was so proud of myself for how I handled this conversation because I have been in therapy for a long time, working on how to resolve conflict calmly. And even though I was literally shaking and my heart was pounding and I was sweating, I stayed calm. All the while I'm trying to talk, she keeps trying to interrupt me. I'm not kidding, every few words she was trying to interrupt me. And a few times I had to literally stop and be like, can I finish? And she would be like, fine. So I started by saying, I understand that you feel that way. I like validated her feelings. I said I was really sorry and that was never my intention. And I said, I just thought because you weren't able to do the wedding games when I needed them, that maybe you could do this instead. I'm not asking you to buy the whole list. Just contribute one thing and send it to me. And she cut me off again. And she was like, that's not fair. Like, I've been really busy. You know, this has been a lot. I try to keep going. And I said, honestly, this whole process has been really stressful for me. I know you've had a lot going on with work and your boyfriend. I know you've been busy, but I feel like every time I've tried to talk about wedding stuff, you've been busy. And I really feel like you haven't been there for me. And like, before I can even get my last words out, she starts yelling at me. I had never been yelled at by her. Like, she was going ballistic, and I'm trying to calm her down. She's clearly not listening to me. I was trying to be like, I'm sorry if you feel attacked. That's not my intention. Like, I'm just trying to tell you how I feel. And she was like, no, you know what? Like, getting like very irate and like just not listening, but also not having a complete thought, just in a rage. And she finally goes, well, you haven't been there for me either. And then she hangs up. I was in shock. Like, literally in shock. It was so sudden. It was out of fucking nowhere. And it wasn't true. It was objectively not true that I hadn't been there for her. I tried to call her back like 5 times. And eventually I texted her and I said, if you decide to do this, you are ending our friendship right now. And know that it's not me choosing this, it's you. And we haven't spoken since. Literally a 5-minute phone call for an 8-year friendship. I immediately blocked her on Instagram because she still had her vacation planned. Her boyfriend's best friend lived like 30 minutes away from me. And if she was going to post anything on her story, I just didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know that she was in my city and refusing to apologize or show up in any capacity. So I didn't block her number, just her Instagram, like, stories. At that time, I just knew that if I hadn't blocked her and she was posting stuff, I would look, and I didn't want to hurt myself like that. So I just broke down. I was so tired and so distraught and in shock. Thank God I had 2 of my other best friends coming from out of town the couple days after for the wedding shower. Friends who were there for me through all of this and like really stepped up. It was a lot. I was already dealing with so much, and then on top of it, to be like, I just don't understand. Like, it literally didn't make sense to me why this was happening. We haven't spoken since, and I really do often wonder what went through her head to react like that. There was never any closure. But honestly, again, this is one of those friendships where I think not getting closure was okay. Because for someone to treat me the way that she did, especially in the end, for her to not even be able to have a rational, calm conversation about both of our feelings, it really opened my eyes to who she really was. And it doesn't discount who she was in the past, how beautiful our friendship was when we were younger and when things were different. But it showed me who she became and who she was becoming and who she was at that moment. And it was clear that she didn't care about my feelings. She didn't care. She didn't care about the help that I needed. She didn't care about what I was going through. And it fucking sucked because I cared so much about her. We were friends for so long. I loved her. We had been friends through so many different phases. But something I've learned painfully over the years is not to tolerate shitty behavior, even if you love them, even if you've been friends for a long time. No one deserves to be yelled at or discarded or to have their words twisted just to fit their narrative. I can see that she was clearly going through something else, maybe something she didn't tell me, but I don't feel the need to reach out to someone who's capable of treating me that way. She was supposed to be my maid of honor and bailed literally 3 days before my wedding shower. That's just insane. because she couldn't self-reflect or take any accountability in her behavior and how she was treating me. And unfortunately, that's a common theme in a lot of friendships or a lot of relationships. People who are just simply unable to do an ounce of self-reflection or unable to emotionally regulate, but make it your problem. And that's just something I don't tolerate in my life anymore. Like, genuinely, this friendship breakup was a wake-up call to me for that. I don't do that. If you can't sit down and have a rational adult conversation about not just how you feel, but about how we both feel and come to some kind of understanding, then it is not worth it to me to expend energy fighting with someone to prove to them that they should care about me. Like, fuck that. Absolutely fuck that. If she had reached out to me and took accountability and wanted to actually sit down and have a rational conversation, I would have been open to that. Shit, I'd probably be open to that now. Would that mean things would go back to the way they were? Absolutely not. Would it clear the air though? Maybe. I'm not sure. But for now, thankfully, I'm not, haunted by this friendship breakup. I can look at it objectively and see it for what it was. Someone who was clearly hurting and unable to regulate, taking it out on me. And I don't let that shit fly. I don't allow that in my life. Of course, it's different when someone's able to reach back out and take accountability later. I'm always open to the possibility of that, even years down the line. But I'm not going to hold my breath, Like, I'm going to make peace within myself and move on like I have and live my life just trying to be a better person every day. That's how I live my life. So I am so fucking grateful that I had my family and my fiance and my other friends to really pick me up during this time. Our wedding party truly stepped the fuck up during all of this. And the wedding did end up being beautiful. The wedding shower was amazing. Everything came together despite all the mess that surrounded it and all the complex feelings underneath it. Like, our wedding was beautiful. Weddings can, really bring out the worst in people. But I think even if this hadn't happened during the wedding shower weekend, it would have happened at the bachelorette party or at the wedding or somewhere else along the line. Like, obviously, our friendship, looking back, had started showing cracks before this explosive ending. It was going to happen at some point, whether it was when it did happen or later down the line. I think that when you notice something is off in a relationship, and sometimes, don't get me wrong, overthinkers, I'm with you. I am an overthinker. So sometimes it can be hard to not take things personally and separate when things are actually off versus you perceiving something is off. You know what I mean? But you need to listen to your gut when you feel something is wrong in a friendship. Because in every instance, when I have felt that way, the friendship has ended. Whether it was sooner or later, it ended. I know how hard it is to want to believe in the best of your friends, especially someone who's a best friend. But something I have learned over the years is you have to believe someone when they tell you and show you who they are. A lot of times in my friendships that have ended, I've looked back and been like, I did know who they were. I just didn't want to believe that they were capable of doing those things to me. Sometimes you have a little more idealistic version of them in your head. Maybe it's the way that they present themselves, or maybe it's the potential that you see in them and that you hope for them. That happens in any relationship, romantic or platonic. And you need to believe people when they show you or tell you who they are. This friendship breakup was one of those where it just made me feel like I didn't know who Daisy was this entire time. And I feel like that's a feeling that a lot of people relate to when a friendship ends, especially when it ends like this, when it ends in a 5-minute phone call of someone yelling at you. It's hard not to be like, did I even know them? Did they ever care? Sometimes they did. Sometimes maybe they didn't. And it's hard to cope with. It's hard to cope with when someone that you think you know shows behavior that is unlike that person, that version that you have in your head. Or maybe it's unlike the way they've ever treated you before, but you've seen them treat other people that way before, if that makes sense. Yeah. If you've lived through some kind of version of this, something explosive with no closure, no warning, feel free to reach out if you're ready to share your story. I want this to be a safe space where we can really grieve our friendships. Because a lot of times, and in any grief, really, you're just kind of expected to move on, and it's not that simple or easy. I feel like it's easier sometimes when you've had a friendship that has for a long time been kind of running on thin ice, you know what I mean? Sometimes not. Like with this one, it was truly shocking, but I think because of the amazing friends I had around me at the time, it was easier for me to like pick up and move on. But another friendship breakup that I had recently, the one that inspired this podcast, was extremely explosive. And that one took me months. I mean, it's almost been a year and, I'm still grieving that. But that one, is a different story for another time, probably a long time from now, because it's just too soon for that one. But yeah, if this resonated with you, and you're ready to share your story, please email me at wedon'ttalkpod@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram at wedon'ttalkpod or on my personal at Dallyboo. And please, please, please follow, like, subscribe, do all those things. They help out a lot. And I will see you in the next one, I guess.